Yo guys, it's JJ here, and today I'm going to be taking you guys through a beat that I think is super dope. And of course, by the title of the video, you know it, it's for 21's and Drake's collab, OVO 4L collab, Her Loss, the album. And this beat is especially tailor-made for this album, so let's just get straight into this joint. First of all, considering this is a Drake and 21 collab, I actually got a sample, a vocal sample, and not just from anyone, I got a sample from the Miss Lauryn Hill herself. I thought it would be very fitting considering, you know, the hip hop background she has, and to use her as a sample for a Drake x 21 collab album. It fits perfectly. So as you guys can see, I've got a loop that I've already chopped out from the sample, and the sample was I Gotta Find a Peace of Mind. Beautiful song. I recommend you go check it out. But once I got the sample and I got the loop out, I rendered this out and then I took it down 600 cents. Then from there, I played around with the sample to make sure it's on BPM perfectly. So what I did was I turned on the stretch tool and just messed around with the sample. So as you guys can see, I got 3 different chops just so I could align it properly and it fits within the tempo perfectly. And of course, if you guys ever want me to do a tutorial about how to do sampling and how to make samples even, hey, let me know down in the comments. So for the loop, as you guys can see, first of all, the mixer track is very busy. But let me explain it. First of all, I got myself a free limiter, which I use as a compressor. This just allows it to, like, the sample doesn't get too loud or too quiet. It just stays at a nice constant volume. Because as humans, we can't control our volume really well, so we gotta get machines to do it. Next up, I cut out a lot of frequencies, all the lows and the general highs. Then on top of that, I added a Fruity Love filter on the simple low pass preset. Then on top of that, I added a delay with a ping pong effect, and as you guys can see, these are the settings I used. Then I added a super heavy reverb just so it really drowns it out, sounds super nice and spacey and angelic. And then last but not least, an even bigger EQ, and then cutting out much more frequencies and some I wasn't a fan of. But next up, to complement the vocals, we got ourselves, of course, a beautiful piano, and it's from the plugin called Piano V2, and I'm going to my go-to piano, the American Large Studio. As you guys can see here, I lay down this lovely chord progression, very lush, very moving, very emotional. It's super Drake 21-esque, like, it just is perfectly. And now I'll take you guys through it. First of all, I laid down some roof notes that I thought would go really well with the vocal sample, so that's what I did, and then I copy and pasted it up literally 3 times. So it has a lovely depth of frequencies. And from there, what I did was lay down 11th minor chords, and what those chords pretty much are, just to show you, as you guys can see, we got ourselves a lovely B minor chord here, you know, standard. But I lay down this extra note on top, and it's the 11th note starting from B. If you count that as 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up, it'll be the 11th, which is why we know it as an 11th minor. And then from there, I obviously lay down the rest of the chords, and these type of chords, 11th chords, really carry lots of emotion through. I really recommend using that kind of stuff for Drake beats, for Her Loss type beats, you know what I mean? And then from there, I just continued the progression and lay down some things I really liked and sounded. And as well as that, you can see I kind of played with the rhythm of the piano just to give it a bit more movement and fit the vocal sample even better, because the sample itself had like a little guitar in the back, but I had to cut it out as best as I could so that this piano could really shine through. And lastly, as you guys can see, I've got some nice little transition notes, a few filler notes here and there, and that's really all it is. Then last but not least, I promise, all you want to do is click Alt S to strum, but in my case, I clicked Alt and then drag the key manually so it doesn't follow like the systematic thing. You can just like automatically place it wherever you want. It's kind of doing like a manual strum, if you get what I'm saying. And then on top of that, I clicked Alt R and just randomize the velocity. That just makes the piano sound so much more human, so much more emotional, and same with the strumming. And I know I've gone into this piano quite in depth, but it really sounds great. So without further ado, this is the piano. It sounds so luscious, so great. Drake could flow with it great. It goes really well with the sample, and it comes naturally by ear, in my opinion, when it comes to laying down your own chords over a sample. But honestly, just practice it. Use the method of placing the root notes first and then constructing it from there, and it will take you a long way. But of course, practice is key. Now, as for effects, I laid down a very basic EQ, as you guys can see, cutting up highs and lows, and then putting a few frequencies I wasn't a fan of. Then next up, we got ourselves some RC20, and I kept the noise on as the basic Vinyl 1 preset. It just gives it that vintage sound and it helps make the sample sound more lively. It fits the whole theme even better, so so that's why I did that. And then on top of that, I added a fair amount of reverb because you really want to create that ambience when it comes to these sorts of beats, those Her Loss beats, those Drake 21 collab beats. And then on top of that, I stereo separated this around 50-ish%, just so it's not like too far in your face, and it also let the sample take the main stage of the whole instrumental, which is what I was personally trying to get across. Next up, we got ourselves a instance of Expand 2, and I chose a preset called the Evil Frog, which is quite funny, and it's from the Soft Pads Bank, as you guys can see. And all I did honestly was just copy and paste the chords that was from the piano, took the whole thing up an octave, and then removed a few like transitioning notes, these kind of cascading notes, and just kept the very basic chords in play and removed all of the root notes below. However, I did click Alt R to randomize the velocity, just so it gave it a bit more of a human feel again. And this pad was super luscious, so I thought it suited it really well. So here's what the sound sounds like. And just from hearing that, you guys can see what I mean. I really love the sound. It complements the piano well in a sample. It gives it a very angelic and spacious feel. It really does a lot for the beat. And it kind of sounds a bit like a vocal, if you know what I'm saying, but I just love that whole like spacey ambient element of it. For effects, I just placed a basic EQ and messed around with the frequencies I was a fan and not a fan of. Then on top of that, I added a bit of a delay, but the delay is very subtle. You won't really pick up on it, but it does the job in my opinion. It just kind of fills in that extra bit of room and really makes the scene more grand. And then on top of that, of course, I have a semi-heavy reverb, I'd like to say. It just makes it more ambient, gives it that more angelic feel, and it just really does the job well. Now on top of that, I stereo separated this at around like 80%, so it was like a bit far back in the mix, not too far in your face, but perfectly sat there. Now next up, we got ourselves a preset in Omnisphere, of course, and it's literally my favorite bass, I can't lie, the Growler Moog bass. The reason I chose a synth bass for this beat is because the way it's so powerful and moving throughout the whole thing, I think it really did the job well in comparison to a normal bass, so that's why I chose a synth one instead. And as you guys can see, very basic. All I did was just follow the root notes, and it's as simple as that. So this is what the bass sounds like. And there we have it. As for effects, all I did was whack on the beefy preset from Decapitator, and that was it. I didn't even EQ the sound. Now, last but not least, I got myself another instance of Omnisphere, of course, and I used a preset called the Boys Choir Ooze-F preset. And the reason I chose this preset was, as I said before, that other preset sounded a bit like a choir, so I was like, you know what, let me see what a nice choir could do to this, maybe elevate it more, and guess what? If it's in this video, then it definitely did. So all I did, as you guys can see from here, place the same chords again, no transitioning notes, no cascading notes, no root notes, just the very basic chords itself. And the reason I've done this and I've got a lot of layers going and let the piano do its thing is because the sample in the piano is so grand. It just does everything it needs to do. These kind of ambient elements from the pad and the choir just provide that extra support to it all. And it doesn't also take up too much space in the mix. It still leaves room for the artist to do his thing, which is of course in this instance, Drake and 21 flipping Savage. And now of course, this is what it sounds like. And there we have it. As for effects, you can see, of course, very basic reverb, ducked some frequencies I wasn't a fan of. On top of that, I added a pretty heavy reverb, you know, make it ambient, spacious, more angelic, all those themes. And then I stereo separated this one to the max because I wanted it really far back in the mix, kind of like a backup choir, because that's the whole point of a choir. And without further ado, time to play the full sample. And there you have it, guys, super dope sample. And now let's just get into the drums. So first of all, we got ourselves an 808 pattern, as you guys can see. Simple drum pattern. Honestly, it just follows the same pattern every 2 bar, but all I do is I let it follow the root notes, as you guys can see. And then towards this part of the 808 pattern, I know this note is out of the root note scale, if that makes sense, like the root notes of the piano. However, the reason I took it down just like 2 semitones is because it gave it a bit of nice bounce, so I thought it would be a good bit of variation throughout the whole constant E minor, throughout the whole constant E note, so a nice little switch up would have been nice. Also, you want to remember, click Control A and the scroller wheel so you can get a maximum velocity engagement. That allows your 808 to punch really nicely and also provide that extra boom to the whole beat. So without further ado, this is what the 808 pattern sounds like. And there you have it. Next up, we got ourselves a very simple crash with a bit of reverb. There you have it. Now we got ourselves a nice little snare pattern, as you guys can see, and it just repeats every 2 bar. Very simple, repetitive, but does the job nicely. So this is what the pattern sounds like. Don't worry, I won't play the full 8 bar because we all know what this pattern sounds like by now. Next up, we got ourselves a hi-hat pattern, and as you guys can see, every other hi-hat has the velocity ducked just a bit, and that gives it a nice little rhythmic bounce. And on top of that, the reason I added 0 rolls to the whole thing is because the instrumentals just carry it so far forward. The melodic components already take up so much room that I don't want to do anything too crazy with the drums, so kept it quite basic. However, this is what the hat sounds like. And there you have it. And now, last but not least, we got ourselves a kick pattern that obviously repeats every 2 bars, same as the 808 pattern. And as well as that, you want to hit Control A, use your scroller wheel, and max out velocity out, just so it allows you to get a really punchy kick, a really punchy 808, and it just makes the beat sound so much better. I really recommend you take that on board. And now, this is what the kick pattern sounds like. And there you have it. And now, without further ado, this is what the full drum pattern sounds like. And there you have it, guys. And now you've made it to the end of the video. Obviously, thank you very much for watching. Highly appreciate it. Hope you guys have obviously enjoyed it. And let me know what you think. Does this sound like a beat that would go on the Her Loss, the 21X Drake collab? Let me know down in the comments. Make sure to subscribe and like. And see you next time. Peace.